Hello, I'm Josh, and I'm a member of New York Community Action Project. Today, I will be describing the current system of accountability for the NYPD and why it is inadequate. I will provide a brief cursory overview of the current three institutions responsible for holding the NYPD accountable and why they fail. Hopefully, this presentation will demonstrate why we need an alternative. Civilian Complaint Review Board, CCRB. The CCRB is the most widely known institution of oversight for the NYPD. It consists of a staff of approximately 200 people. It is headed by a 13-member board. 5 are picked by the city council, 5 by the mayor, 3 by the police commissioner. It is empowered to receive, investigate, mediate, hear, make findings, and recommend actions on complaints against New York City police officers, alleging the use of excessive or unnecessary force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, or the use of offensive language. Originally, CCRB could only recommend discipline, but in 2012, they signed a memorandum of understanding with the NYPD, which allowed them to prosecute certain classes of cases, the most serious charges of misconduct. However, ultimately, the police commissioner retained authority to determine if discipline is imposed and the nature of discipline. In 2017, only 27% of the time did discipline by the NYPD match CCRB prosecution decisions. CCRB has the lowest truncation rate of all the oversight bodies in New York City. That's 44%. Truncation is when a case is closed without a full investigation. This means that 44% of cases are closed without a full investigation, which is still a very large amount. We see here a funneling effect when it comes to resolution of cases. First of all, will a case be fully investigated? Second of all, will CCRB decide that discipline is appropriate? Finally, will the NYPD actually follow through with the recommendations? The end result is that very few cases are actually the same recommendation as the CCRB. What are the main issues with the CCRB? First of all, they're unelected. Second of all, they're not independent. The mayor and police commissioner have appointees on the board, and in fact, the majority of the appointees are either by the mayor or the police commissioner. They lack power. They prosecute only a limited amount of cases, and they can be overruled by the police commissioner. Finally, they cannot set policies for the NYPD. NYPD Internal Affairs, IAB. The Internal Affairs Bureau, also known as IAB, detects, investigates, and brings to justice New York City police officers and civilians who engage in misconduct and corruption. They're primarily, though, focused on corruption within the NYPD. They can receive complaints from the public and the NYPD service members by telephone, email, and mail. Allegations of corruption can also be reported in person at an NYPD facility. They also maintain a non-recorded anonymous tip line. It is an investigative unit located within the NYPD. It handles complaints of police corruption or neglect. Crucially, none of their investigations are made public. They are currently overseen by the Commission Against Police Corruption. This is a board appointed by the mayor. It releases an annual report analyzing the effectiveness of the IAB. In 2018, the commission found that IAB interviewed witnesses in 82% of the cases. Of those, they only accurately summarized interviews in 82% of the cases, and of those, they were only satisfied with the quality of interviews in 77% of the cases. Despite these numbers, the commission agreed with the disposition in 98% of the cases. This is despite the fact that the majority of the cases were ruled as being unsubstantiated. This means that the investigation was unable to clearly prove or disprove that the alleged misconduct occurred. And there's a pretty high likelihood a lot of those cases were not fully investigated. What are the main issues with the IAB? First of all, they're unelected, they lack transparency, they lack independence, they're actually within the NYPD, essentially the NYPD investigating itself, and they're very limited in scope in what they do. All we have in terms of accountability is a meta-analysis of the commission which is just a general report of the commission's finding. But we don't know the actual substance of the cases or why they are resolved the way they are resolved. Nothing in the commission's report provides us with anything that we can use to verify their opinion, so we just have to take their word for it. It is important to remember that we can't trust the commission, since they are ultimately appointees of the mayor, who often sides with the NYPD. NYPD Office of Inspector General, also known as OIG-NYPD. The Office of the Inspector General for the NYPD is independent of the NYPD and is charged with investigating, reviewing, studying, auditing, and making recommendations regarding the operations, policies, programs, and practices of the New York City Police Department. They're appointed by the Department of Investigation, which is a law enforcement agency in New York City, whose commissioner is appointed by the mayor. It is tasked with reviewing NYPD policies and procedures and issuing recommendations relating to the operations, policies, programs, and practices of the NYPD, such as issues relating to civil rights and police-community relations. The main issues of the Inspector General are that they lack power, the office does not directly work with any groups that implements or drafts policies for the NYPD. They report their findings to the city council and the mayor. This kind of institution would be better in a supporting role with an institution with real power and oversight over policies. And finally, they lack independence from the mayor, which, as discussed previously, is a serious issue. In conclusion, these organizations are all inadequate in some way or another. This is why we need a truly democratic institution that is independent of police and mayor with real power. This is why we need community control of the police. To achieve community control of the police, we're proposing the creation of a Civilian Police Accountability, CPAC, in New York City. What is CPAC? CPAC is an oversight and control institution that will give people real power and control over the police. What are its features? First of all, it's elected. Each member represents a district and is elected from that district. It's entirely transparent and will have stringent reporting requirements. Third of all, no police or anybody with relatives of the police can be a member of the CPAC. This includes people who are former police officers or even relatives of former police officers. The CPAC proposal takes very seriously the possibility of institutional capture by the NYPD. Fourth, it will have real power to investigate and discipline. In particular, its authority to discipline will supersede the police commissioner, which is unlike the Ccrb, which can be overruled by the police commissioner. Fifth, it will have the power to set policies and budget for the NYPD. Sixth, it will have the power to negotiate a union contract with the NYPD police officers. Union contracts often provide barriers to discipline and include agreements that require any disciplinary hearing to include members of the NYPD. With the power to negotiate union contracts, such provisions can be eliminated. Finally, essentially, it will give communities real power over the police and policing in their neighborhoods. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you found it informative. Have a good evening.